Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /EntitledPeople, where people truly think they can do what they want, when they want, and no one else matters. And in today's episode, we've got Karens letting their kids rob houses, people thinking they can park anywhere they want, narcissistic mother-in-laws. It's going to be a wild one. Guys, I hope you enjoy the stories. Don't shake your heads too hard. And as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So this isn't my story, but it's my friend Adam's. Adam is a retired police officer, and this takes place back in the 90s, when Adam was a beat cop, maybe a year or two into his service. At the time this story takes place, a firebug had targeted several businesses over the course of a 3-month period. The fires were put out, but they were getting bigger and bigger, causing thousands of dollars in damages. Everyone was on edge, and the police were patrolling the area every night to try to catch Mr. Firebug. On this particular night, in the middle of February, Adam and his partner Rick drew the short stick, and thus they were assigned to patrol part of the area. While on patrol, he notices a classic Mercedes-Benz pulling up to a house, and a familiar lady dressed in a thick fur coat steps out. He groans. It's the wife of a local business owner that every officer in the town has had the displeasure to ticket for various parking and traffic violations. Now, it would have been fine if she was a nice lady or something, but no. Her 3 default sentences were, "Don't you know who I am? Where's your manager? And I'll have your job." Seriously, she was a Karen before Karens were even a thing. So Rick points out to Adam that Karen had parked right by the fire hydrant, par for the course. Adam then gets ready, and he steps out of the squad car. He approaches and says, "Good evening, Mrs. Karen." At that, she says, "What are you doing here?" Adam guessed that's the Karen's version of the word hello. Adam tells her, "I'm working beat. Do you know you parked right next to a fire hydrant?" Karen replies, "So?" He then says, "I'm suggesting you move it before I write you a ticket. I'm not in the mood for extra paperwork tonight." At that, Karen says, "Listen, you need to leave my car alone, or I'll have your job." With that, Karen storms off to the house. She goes inside and slams the door. Adam thought, "If you say so." He then proceeds to check the outside of the car for any more violations, and wishing that being a bitch was a federal offense. As he's putting the ticket under the windshield wiper, the call that everyone's been dreading comes on the radio. A fire alarm has been triggered, and the address was right across the street. Adam looks over at the building, and he can see a faint orange glow in the windows on the 2nd floor. He reports the glow. He and Rick get ready, just in case Mr. Firebug decides to cross their path. Several other officers arrive, and they set a perimeter around the building as the glow gets brighter and brighter. Unfortunately, by the time the fire department gets there, flashover happens, and all the windows on the 2nd floor get blown out. It was so hot that Adam felt sweat form on his face. It's at this point the fire department needs to get the hoses set up, but Karen's car is in the way. Using safety hammers, they break the windows and then run the hoses through, getting everything set up in record time. And during all the chaos, Karen comes out and she sounds like a banshee that had swallowed an air raid siren. The woman runs over and she tries unhooking the hose from the hydrant. She screams, "What are you doing? My car is ruined." It actually took 2 officers to restrain her and bark at her to go back inside to let everyone do their jobs. The woman actually listened and she returned inside. Adam then spent the rest of his shift helping with the fire and investigation. It was close to dawn when he returned to the station to finish up. All he wanted to do was go home and crawl into bed. And that's when his supervisor calls Rick and him over and reports that Karen reported several $1,000s worth of damage. Not only had her windows been broken, but the water had gotten in and froze because it was, again, the middle of February. The supervisor asked them what happened and they reported everything. The supervisor then shook her head, laughed, and she said, "Well, you had nothing to do with the car getting damaged, so I consider this case closed." A few weeks later, they caught the firebug. It was a different business owner who was trying to commit insurance fraud. He figured if several other buildings caught fire, nobody would think he was responsible for burning down his own business. Unfortunately, Karen never did seem to learn her lesson, so she was back racking up tickets and being a thorn in the police's side. She did have to pay for the damages and the ticket Adam gave her, but being a rude, rich woman, again, she never did learn. You know, being that rich and entitled, people see stuff like that as little nuisances more than anything. Like, it is nice to hear that she got to see what happens when she deliberately parks by a fire hydrant. But like OP said, when she's got that much money, lessons are not learned. Like, I remember reading a post a long time ago where OP used to date this ultra rich guy who literally parked anywhere he wanted, just like this Karen. And when OP asked him why he did that, the guy would just go, meh, when you've got this much money, you just pay to be able to do stuff. Like, parking in a handicap spot cost me $300. Driving over the speed limit cost me blah blah blah. You get the point. Like, it must be nice to be that rich, right? With that said, guys, I can't think of anything more entitled than someone trying to remove the hose from a fire hydrant when the place across the street is on fire. So here's the setup. Our tale begins about 10 to 11 years ago. It was summer, and my parents wanted to go on vacation. Me, being a 16-year-old with both a gaming addiction and seeing my cue to live the free, independent, supervised life, I offered to house and dog sit while they and my sister went on vacation. The first week they were gone, gaming took up 90% of my time, and I developed the day and night schedule of a back-end developer. I still did all the chores around the house, with a few exceptions, since I deemed they could wait. That's when I checked the mailbox, and there's a handwritten letter from the HOA. The letter said that the grass in front of my lawn was way too tall, according to regulations. So I went out, took a look at the grass, which was maybe 1 centimeter too tall. The same day I cut the grass because might as well do so to keep the peace. The day after, a new letter came. This time, the roses in my front yard were going too far out, through the fence, by 15 centimeters. I once again comply. On the third day, my parents' backyard bushes were too tall. And here's where I finally get irritated, since you have to enter my parents' property to check the bush height. With that, I go and visit my next door neighbor, who I knew was on the HOA board. I ask her about the letters, and she looks through them and laughs. She tells me that these weren't sent by anyone on the board, and these handwritten letters are from the mega Karen who lived a few houses down. The woman had been kicked out of the HOA board after she poisoned 3 dogs in the neighborhood with rat poison. The dogs luckily survived, but she's that kind of woman. So not wanting to deal with her, I decide to let the case rest and leave my parents' bushes alone. So fast forward a week into my parents' vacation. After being alone for 7 days, playing non-stop video games, I decide to do something else. As any teenager would, I start to plan a gathering of some sort because I'm starting to need some social interaction. Since I'm a gamer, instead of holding a straight-up party, I decide to invite friends over for a LAN party, so we could play a video game called Counter-Strike. Fast forward to said LAN party. My parents' dining room smells like teenage farts, Axe body spray, sweat, and chips mixed together. Typical LAN stuff. At 1 a.m., there's a loud knock on the door, so I go out to see 2 cops looking at me. Cop number 1 says, we have a report that there's a loud party going on, and we were told that there's several minors here doing drugs. I tell the officer I have no idea what you're talking about. The officer tells me we've had a frantic woman calling constantly, which is why we came. But it seems we're more of a disturbance than you guys are. We'll leave you to it then. 2 days after, I get another knock on my door, and there she is, standing in front of me, the mega Karen. The woman starts screaming that me and my drug party kept her up all night, and that I'm a horrible brat who needs to tend to my bushes if my parents don't want to lose the house. At this point, I stop her and I remind her that 1, the HOA doesn't have the power to do that, 2, that I know she was kicked out of the HOA so she has no say anymore, 3, that I didn't even have a party, and 4, that she needs to stay the F away from my backyard. Hearing me say that, she got even madder, and she starts screaming that she would have me and my parents arrested. And then she admits that the poison treats were meant for my dog as well. I slammed the door at this point. She had royally pissed me off because no one threatens my good boy. No one. I had about 4 days before my parents returned, so I made them count. I went over and talked with the neighbors surrounding her house. I told them that I would do all the yard work for them, which involved loud equipment around her house. Legally, we were allowed to make noise from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. with yard work. So with that, I began. After the first day, Karen came out and she screamed at me because she knew what I was doing. She even threw a rock at me, but I didn't care. I was gonna make as much legal sound as possible. Whenever she complained, I just told her that her plants weren't up to HOA standard. So Friday rolls around and it's 8 a.m. Me and my friends are gathered bright and early in front of her house. We have all the tools ready. We turn on the speaker, and the speaker's set to the exact legal limit of how loud the music's allowed to be. And with that, Karen lost it. She screamed constantly for an hour and even called the cops twice. But there was nothing they could do about it. I was just doing yard work. If she wants to complain about a loud party, we'll give her something to complain about. We kept it up to the exact time limit. All I can say is kudos to OP because man, that is a lot of physical work OP did, just to spite a Karen neighbor. Like personally, I don't think I would have spent 4 days doing yard work from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. just to annoy a neighbor like that, but hey, to each their own, right? Okay, so I'm very allergic to peanuts. I can't touch them, I can't eat them, I can't go into a Texas roadhouse because the peanut dust in the air sends me out on a gurney, and that's no joke, it's happened. With that said, I work in a restaurant. So around 9 o'clock, or whenever the sit-in customers kind of wind down, David, the sushi chef, will actually make a really nice, authentic Chinese dish for dinner. And I'll munch on it while doing some cleaning chores, or in between tables because that's all we've eaten all day at that point. The owner doesn't keep anything peanut in the store because of how severe my allergy is, and she doesn't want to have to tell a new chef each time that I'll fall over dead in like 30 minutes flat. But tonight, David had brought peanuts from home, and I didn't know, and David doesn't know about my situation. I have 2 tables. One is a group of college guys drinking and eating sushi, not really needing me too heavily, and another is a middle-aged couple that I had just sat down before my food was put on my station. I get the couple's drinks to them, explain our menu, and leave them to their browsing while I go steal a few bites. Now, since I don't eat peanuts regularly, I don't really know the taste of them when they're prepped in a soup dish like what David made. So being hungry, I gulp down like half the bowl, before noticing a small little peanut chunk on my spoon. And that's when hell breaks loose. I don't have medical insurance, which means, ta-da, no EpiPens for me. I'm scrambling on the store phone, trying to get a hold of the owner so she can come and I can leave. And I'm also on my cell phone with 911, telling them to please let the hospital know that I'll be arriving any second, and this is seriously bad. I also let Chef David know that he has to watch the tables until the owner shows up because I'm allergic to nuts, you jackwagon. David's sitting there confused, like, allergy? I don't know allergy. He barely speaks English, and I don't know how to translate that to Mandarin. So I look at him dead in the eyes, and at this point, I'm all 50 shades of blotchy and swollen, and my tongue's pretty useless. And I go, peanuts, kill me, and start to walk out the door. I had totally forgotten that I had tables, and as I grab my bag, the middle-aged woman stands up and she goes, excuse me, where do you think you're going? Are you going to take our order any time tonight? We're hungry. And at that, I'm seriously dumbfounded. I feel how big my face is. It itches, it burns, and it's all around horrible, and she wants me to take her order? I muster what I can and say, I'm sorry ma'am, I'm having an extreme allergic reaction. David here can take your order for you. The Karen screams, that guy can't even speak English. You need to take our order before you leave. I tell the woman, ma'am, you're literally killing me by keeping me here. David will take your order. I then start to walk away when I hear Karen say, seriously? We know the owner of this dirty little place. And when she hears about this, you'll be fired instantly. At this point, one of the college guys stands up and he goes, ma'am, you need to sit down and shut up or leave. He then decides that I can't drive like this and he drives me to the hospital. Apparently, Karen never said a peep to the owner. Whether it was her husband or the other college guys that kept her in check, I don't know. But the owner gave me the next 2 days off to recuperate with pay. But that's my story on how I almost died on the floor of a sushi restaurant because some Karen really wanted some raw salmon. Holy, what a scary situation that was. And I'm glad OP made it through that crazy allergic reaction. But guys, that's wild though, right? Like how Karen did not have a care in the world aside from take my order right now. Then you can die. With that said though, I know EpiPens are super expensive without insurance, but being severely allergic to something like peanuts, it's worth it to have one around just in case you encounter a crazy Karen who doesn't let you go to the hospital. So this happened last month, and I'm still not over it. This was the craziest event in my new house since I moved in. So let's start from the beginning. Last month, my son asked if he could have friends over since we're having a get-together for our family. I say sure, no problem, since I already know the parents of the friends, so I'll just make a couple of calls and I'll invite them too. Fast forward to the weekend. I have everything set up, the food is cooked, and just about ready to have a good time. After 20 minutes, the guests start showing up, and some are my family, my sister, brother-in-law, nephew, and mom. And then my son's friends and parents show up. Everything is up and running. Now, the last parents that show up with their kid, I always knew the father, but I've never met the mother. And the kid was always a little on the troublesome side, but really never anything serious. But today, this all changed. Let's call the boy Joe for simplicity's sake. The party's going well, and everyone's comfortable, enjoying each other's company, and the kids are having a blast. I did set up some rules for the kids to make sure that everyone's outside and not running in and out of my house. One rule is, if they have to use the bathroom, to go through the back door, since it's the quickest way to the bathroom. And only my son was allowed to bring any toys out to play with. Since everything they needed was outside anyways, everyone agreed. But Joe had a little whatever look on his face. After I explained the rules, Joe's dad went to him and he said in a stern voice, "Do you understand the rules, Joe?" Joe responds with a sarcastic tone, "Yes." Now, the way the dad asked, I figured that he was tired of Joe and his nonsense with following rules. And at this point enters his wife. She speaks up for Joe and says, "You don't have to talk to him like that. Joe understands, so just let him play and stop talking to him like he's a kid." So he just tells his wife, "I know him, and you know how he is when we let him do whatever he wants." He doesn't listen, and I'm not going to be embarrassed by lack of respect. I'm going to go get a beer. He then says to me, "Come, let's take a walk." So on the way to the cooler, he tells me, I'm sorry for that, but she lets him get away with everything, and I'm not going to have that behavior while I'm here. I just tell Joe's dad, "It's cool, come on, let's get a beer." So as me and Joe's dad are having a beer, sharing stories, that's when my son comes to me to say that Joe needs to use the bathroom, and can he bring out the Nerf guns? I say sure, just make sure you close your bedroom door when you're done. So my son and Joe run inside, and I think nothing of it. After a while, I see Joe's mom looking like she was ready to leave, while she's been on the phone the entire time. After 5 minutes, my son and Joe walk out with the Nerf guns and start passing them to the other kids. And that's when I see Joe going to mom and telling her something which I couldn't hear, but he was excited about something. Mom just goes back to her phone, and I'm thinking, okay, what's that about? I just ignored it. My son then goes back to the house to get his phone to record the gun battle with his friends, and this is how it went. My son runs back to me and says, "Dad, I can't find my phone." I ask him, "Did you plug it in my room again?" He tells me no, it was in my room on my bookshelf, I swear. So I go inside and I look for it. He checks under his bookshelf and underneath his bed with no luck. I ask him, "Was someone else in here with you?" My son tells me, "Just Joe. He helped me with the toys after he used the bathroom." Now in my mind, I'm fuming. I know it was probably Joe, but I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. So I say, well, come on, let's go back outside and ask him if he took it. I also had to prove it was him, but I had an idea. I go outside and talk to Joe's dad and say, "Hey, I need to talk to you." Joe's dad asked, "What's up?" And I tell him, "I think your son took my son's phone." So Joe's dad calls him over, and that's when mom looks up pissed. Joe looks in shock as he walks over to see what dad wants. He has a mixed look of guilt and fear on his face. And at this point, his mom comes in screaming and says, "I told you to stop yelling at him. Joe, let's go." Joe's dad tells him not to move, and then looks at his wife and says, "Where's his book bag?" She says, "Why? He didn't do anything wrong." So I chime in and say, my son's phone is missing, and Joe was the only one in my son's room, which he shouldn't have been there in the first place. Hearing that, mom gets enraged and says, "My son doesn't have to steal anything from nobody. I knew you were on some BS when I met you, and you treat my son like crap since he's been here. F you and F that phone." Now at this point, I take my phone out and I call the number to my son's phone, and I see Joe running to the car as he realizes what I'm doing. They run to the front of my house, where I see Joe trying to get into their car, but unfortunately it's locked and Karen has the keys. She then screams at Joe and says, "Get in the car, we're going home. You don't need to be around these garbage people." She then opens their car door, and as soon as it opens, I hear the ringtone of my son's phone. Joe looks like he crapped a brick, and Mom's face just drops like a cartoon character. I say to them, give me the phone right now. Joe goes for his bag, but Mom closes the door on his hand, almost breaking it, and that prompts Dad to scream, "What the hell is wrong with you?" I then watch as his wife hits him right in the mouth and all hell breaks loose. I'm just trying to break everything up. It was straight chaos. This all happened in 10 minutes, and someone just calls the police and they show up with 3 cars. After the police break everything up, they question everyone and they called an ambulance for Joe since he was screaming when they got there. Joe's dad was put in a separate car to question him, and Mom was telling so many lies that I'm surprised her teeth didn't fall out. And this is where the nice cop comes in. The nice cop says to her, "Ma'am, we were told that you are the reason for this incident, and it was a stolen phone involved from this house." She just screams at the cop and says, "My son didn't steal nothing. They accused him of stealing the phone. I have money. We don't need to steal from these bums." The officer asked her, "So where's the phone now?" That's when I say it's in the car in his book bag, which she closed the door on his arm when he was going to return it to me. And then she hit her husband in the face. The officer just asked if I can prove it, and I say, yes, I can. I can call the phone. At this point, Karen knows that she's screwed, and all the color drains from her face. The officer says, "Ma'am, please unlock your door." So she unlocks the door, and the cop hears the ringer and asks my son to unlock the phone just to make sure, and he does. They let Dad out of the car since everyone's story was the same, but they tell him to catch a ride with someone else. Dad says, "But officer, this is my car and I don't live with my wife at the moment. She got a ride with me and I'd like to follow the ambulance so I can make sure my son is okay." The cop says to him, "Okay, sir." He then looks at Karen and says, "Ma'am, you're gonna have to..." And that's when she interrupts him and says, "That's my effing car. You're not taking my effing car." The officer says to her, "Ma'am, stop yelling. This is not helping your situation at all. You're coming with us for assault on your husband and your son." So while they're trying to handcuff her, she takes a swing at the cop and she fails horribly. She then gets taken to the ground and they cuff her. I hope she'll spend some time in jail for the assault and taking a swing at the officer. Joe's dad apologized for everything, but I know it wasn't his fault. Guys, what a wild story. And shame on that Karen mom, like, way to go, lady. You encouraged your son to steal from a friend and then started attacking everyone when caught. What a great example she's setting, right? So my ex-girlfriend and I were together for about 2 years, and her mom was a big part of the reason why we broke up. This woman was entitled and narcissistic. This story happened not too long before our breakup. And to understand the story and the situation it revolves around, you need to know certain things. My ex-girlfriend's grandparents are living about 200 kilometers away from where she lives. She frequently drove there to visit them, and so did her parents, with her younger sibling. So a couple of days before the trip, my ex-girlfriend's mom, who we'll call Karen, gets into an accident with her car. The car was basically a write-off at that point and wasn't even in the state to be pulled up on a tow truck. Although both her and the guy who was involved in the accident escaped pretty much unharmed, the car was absolutely wrecked. But enough talking, here we go. My ex and I were visiting her parents. It was Sunday, and my ex's parents and their kids planned to spend their holiday by visiting the grandparents the following week. There was just one tiny problem concerning that plan. The car they planned to use for the trip wasn't much more than a pile of metal. But luckily, ex's mom had the perfect idea to save their holiday plans, and thus this conversation began. So my ex and I enter the living room and Karen says, "Hi there, how are you?" I'm about to tell her that I'm fine when she cuts in and says, "Anyways, whatever you're gonna say, I'm sure you're okay, so listen, I need something from you." I respond, "Yeah, as I was going to say, I'm fine. What exactly do you need?" I just want to note that she usually asked me or us for pretty much everything, so I was very used to this "I need something from you." She then says, "We need your car." I say to her, "Well, that's quite the big ask. Why do you need my car?" Karen says, "Listen, I told you weeks ago that we're visiting my parents tomorrow. I don't have a car anymore to drive there, so we need yours." I tell her I can't give you my car. I have to work all week, and I need it to get there. Besides, technically my insurance doesn't pay anything if someone else besides me or my parents has an accident with this car. Hearing that, Karen says, "Well, I don't see the problem. Just give us your car. We're not gonna get into another accident. The odds of that are impossible." We have 2 little children in the car this time. We'll be extra careful. We need it far more than you do. I try to tell her again and say, I don't think you understand. I need that car to be able to work. I have to get to my workplace, visit customers, take care of their problems, and get back to my workplace, up to 10 times a day if it's a busy one. Besides, my insurance still doesn't allow you to drive the car. I can't afford to pay the damages if there's an accident. Hearing that, Karen says, oh come on, your workplace is like 10 miles away from your home. You can get there by bicycle or something. You're always saying how you like to keep fit and healthy, so it wouldn't be too bad for you to bike to work every day. It'll only help you when you give us your car. I say to her, with all due respect, even if I'd be willing to get to work by bicycle for a week, which I'm not, you still can't drive my car. I can't afford to pay for any accidents you might cause, and I know that you won't. At this point, she loses it, shouting at me saying, you know as well as I do that I'm perfectly capable of driving a car without any accidents. I'm not asking again. I say to her, if you're capable of driving a car, then how come I own a car that's perfectly fine? And you've already destroyed the second car since I've known your daughter. She then shouts at me saying, don't you effing talk to me like that. I dare you to say that I've been in an accident one more time. I dare you. I dare you to call me a bad driver one more time. Both accidents weren't my fault. Now, I don't know much about the first accident and whose fault it was, but I know a lot about the second one. She ran a red light and someone T-boned her. At this point, her husband chimes in and says, honey, calm down a little. I'm sure we can sort this out if we just stay calm and talk about it. Maybe we can rent a car or... She then interrupts him and says, no one asked you. And you know as well as I do that we can't afford to rent a car, so we need his. She then continues yelling at me saying, now just give us the car. We need it way more than you do. There's no way we're missing this trip. So give me the effing car keys already. You have no idea how life works, and you have no idea how important it is for my kids to see their family. So give me your car. At this point, I tell her I'm leaving right now. I look at her daughter and say, you can come with me or you can stay, but I won't stay here more than another minute. My ex looks at me and her mom as I start walking away. After a couple of seconds, she follows me outside, mumbling, goodbye, Mom. Karen follows us down the hallway, screaming at us, saying, don't you dare ever come back here again, none of you. I'll swap the effing locks and burn all your stuff. If you leave now, you won't be coming back here ever again. So with that, we leave the house, with my ex slamming the front door. We then get inside the car, and I sit down and buckle up, and that's when I see Karen in the rear view. She's waving her hand, holding a smartphone. She then screams at us saying, you forgot your phone. Here, take it. She then throws the phone, and it hits my car with a thud. She then runs towards us as I start the engine and drives off. She keeps shouting, don't you ever come back, while waving the phone she threw in her hand. My ex says, I don't think that was my phone. I left mine right in the car right here. She said that while picking it up from the cup holder where she left it. I ask her, so whose phone was it? She tells me, I don't know, but me and Dad both own iPhones, so she might have confused them. I hope the screen's not broken. I just burst out in laughter while leaving the village where they live. After that, my ex's parents took the train to visit the grandparents. After a week, they came back, and the whole don't you dare ever come back here again thing was so forgotten, as her mom didn't feel like taking care of her children and she needed someone to babysit. Oh man guys, that mother seems like a wonderful person, doesn't she? And the thought of her breaking her husband's phone while throwing it at OP is hilarious. With that said though, OP should have stopped after saying no, like it's his car, and he doesn't have to waste time giving any reasons as to why he won't let anyone borrow it. And guys, I also love her logic though. I just got into an accident yesterday, so it's impossible to have another one so soon. Like yeah, that's exactly what a bad driver would say, Karen. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our / entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/ malicious compliance episode, where bad bosses are getting absolutely destroyed. So if you enjoyed this one, go check that one out. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.